Preparing. And Michael, you don't have a problem with this going public, right?
No, that's fine.
Okay. They told me everybody figured that out in advance and everybody knew who it was, but I did not know who that was. So I figured I'd ask.
I appreciate that, but no, I guess I'll be accountable. So I'm good.
All right, no worries. Okay, so we are live now and we can get rolling. We are here with, is Diana with you?
No, she's not. She'll be with me in the vendor room a little bit later.
Oh, okay. So
yeah,
we're here with
the dry one, not the funny one.
So we're here with Michael Stoffregen today, and we are doing basic sequencing. I'm trying to give Michael as much time as possible to finish his presentation. I know as a presenter, things can go long and things can happen and you can run out of time really quickly. So I'm gonna give him as much time as you possibly can. So everybody try to keep yourselves muted, and we'll save questions for the end. And we'll do the raffle at the very end. So be sure you have your VCS number and stick around till then. So with that being said, Michael Stoffregen, take it away.
All right, thank you very much. I hope everybody's happy and healthy in these very strange times that we're living in. A little bit of background on me. I started Christmas decorating in 2000. We had moved into our home here in 1999, and we did a static display from 2000 till 2006. And we started Lightorama in 2006 with 3 controllers and had maybe 3,000 incandescent lights. You know how that is. If you have incandescent lights, you hit all the big box stores right after Christmas, and we would grow each year. By 2015, we had 17 controllers and somewhere between 35 and 40,000 LEDs and incandescent lights. In 2016, I wanted to incorporate some pixels into our display. So I was looking at what Lightorama had, and I stumbled across xLights and began playing with it. It took me about 3 months to do my very first sequence because the concept of creating models and that sort of thing was very new to me. In addition, the groupings and that sort of thing, very, very new. So my very first sequence just took forever to get done. I think it was in April I finished it. It was Christmas Vacation, one of my favorite songs. But in August, we sold everything that we had that was Lightorama. I say everything. We did keep 1 controller, as a just in case. But we sold everything. We bought our first pixels and had our very first show. In 2018, we started Showstopper Sequences, where we sell some of the sequences that I put together for our show. So I've been sequencing now for 14 years. In addition to doing the residential sequencing through Showstopper Sequences, also do some commercial work. Most of that hits in the August, September, sometimes October timeframe. All right, you've probably seen some of the stuff here we've got. Presentation etiquette. Again, if you've got questions, a good thing to do, go ahead and type it in while we're going along, even though I won't stop and answer them till the end. That can be a place marker for you because by the time we get to the end, you may have forgotten your question. So if you'd like to do that, just put it in the chat and we'll revisit that and try to get those questions answered for you at the very end. If you think of something, Diana and I will be in the vendor room from 2:30 to 3 Eastern time today. And so you're more than welcome to stop by and ask a question there. Now, one of the things that I like to do is have a methodology. That is a way of looking at things, a way of approaching a problem. And when you're just learning the basics of sequencing, you really need to crawl before you walk. And that's why I think mine first sequence took so long, because I did a lot of crawling, trying to get my head wrapped around what was actually going on. So what you need to do is really focus in on the basics of what you, of the program, the basics, and then build off of that. Work on the foundation and just keep adding more and more skills as you go along. xLights is such a feature-rich program. It's just, it takes a long time to get your head around a lot of it. And I'm kind of a creative person. I'm not a real technical person. So I will tell you the technical side of the program. A lot of it, you know, my eyes get fuzzy. I don't know what's going on. So I keep it very simple on the controller configuration side and that sort of stuff. But that's just the way that my brain works. All right, a few assumptions. First off, you've got to have xLights installed. I know Clyde talked about the Queen Mary vamp plugins. Those should be installed. And you need to have your models and groups set up. So that's kind of where I'm assuming you're starting is with those things in place. Now, one of the things you need to do when you start is prep your perspective. And I'm sure Clyde went over this with you. You need to move and dock windows. One of the things that I really enjoy having is more than one monitor. The only thing that I stick up on my second monitor is my house preview. I keep all the other sequencing tools on my main screen, but I like to look up and look at what's going on the multi-screen. And on the laptop, that as well. Now, one of the things I'm gonna do, I'm gonna switch over here to my xLights. And I'm gonna go up here. This is kind of a basic setup. What I try to do, I eliminate everything except for the effect, the colors, the layer blending, the layer settings, house preview, and model preview. I sequence with those things primarily. Now, if you will go into whatever sequence you're doing and go into the preferences, a couple of things that you can do. One of them that I think is very important is the autosave. I've got mine set for every 3 minutes. It really can be very frustrating to have the latest version of xLights loaded up and you be the first person to discover a bug while you're trying to get a sequence done. So what I try to do is I set it up so that it sequences every 3 minutes. And I think that's very, very important. Another thing, now this is a little bit, I say controversial because the developers, Keith has mentioned that you never want to take off the save, your render file, your FSEQ file. He says, leave that on. Well, I'll be honest with you. Sometimes what I will do is I will take this off and I will take the render on save off. So the reason why I shut those off is because if I'm getting towards the end of a sequence and it actually might take it maybe 2-3 minutes to render, every time I hit Control S to save, I don't want it to sit there for 2 or 3 minutes while it's rendering. So what I will do is just hit, take these off and hit Control Save. And then before I actually save it the final time, you've got to go back in and turn on the render save and the save FSEQ. You've got to put those back on. That's the key thing. You've got to remember to put those back on or it's going to mess things up for you. All right. Another thing that I do, I don't know if Clyde covered this, but when I create a new sequence, I will go into, I'll right click here on the new timing. I'll go down to the edit display elements and I will select my view. Now, my view is usually a scaled down version. You'll notice I still have a lot of models over here on the left-hand side. The reason why I have a lot of models over there on the left-hand side is because all of those models are included in the groups that I've got under my view. So I'll call up my view and then I will tell go over here and click Make Master. So now my master view and my view are the same. And then that's when I start sequencing. I will sequence from my view. And the reason why I sequence from my view is when you have multiple timing tracks, if you have my view on, you can click on multiple timing tracks at one time. That comes in handy, for example, if you're trying to hit the beats with, say, arches, and you need the beat timing tracks on there, but you only want to do it within a specific range, that's very handy. And so I will, like I said, I will sequence from my view and not the master view when I do my sequencing. Okay, so the big points there: save often. And when you get into long render times, you can take off the render on save and saving your FSEQ. You can take those off, but you got to remember to turn them back on before you finish your session. And the last thing, again, I use my view versus the master view. Now here at the sequencing tab, a couple of things. You've got your command menus across the top. Of course, you've got your effects. Some people like to take these effects and you can drag them over and put them on the left or right hand margin of the layout grid. You have your model preview and your house preview that you can look at. You've got your waveform, the sequencing area, and then of course all the other windows that you have. Now, if you go up here in view, you can look at, there's a lot of other windows that you can add in. There's an effect dropper, there's value curves, there's a color dropper, video preview, the select effect. I don't use those very often. And the reason why is because I like to keep my screen clean, and it makes it easier for me to sequence. The more cluttered I find that it is, the more difficult it is for me to figure out exactly what I want to do. Just add sequencing time. And given how long it already takes to sequence, there's really nothing else that I want to do. All right, let me get over here, get caught up on the slides. All right, now starting a sequence, I want to talk a little bit about music selection. You know, you have the classics. I always think of White Christmas by Bing Crosby as being one of the more common classics. You know, Gene Autry, Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer, those types of things. Then you have the more modern songs, and the modern songs a lot of times are remakes. Michael Bublé, of course, is another crooner, and he does some of the classics just as well as the original crooners did, if not better. And then there's lots of new songs. I always encourage people, if you are going to do a sequence, please go buy the MP3. The reason why I say go buy the MP3 is because for artists, we want to reward them in the Christmas area. In other words, we want Christmas songs to look like it's a lucrative niche for them. And so go buy the song. It's going to cost you somewhere between 99 cents and $1.29 is usually the price range. So spend the money, reward the artists, and as a result of that, we'll keep getting Christmas music from artists because they know they can make money at it. So please, 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 if you're going to use a song, go and buy it, even if you have to use an edited version. All right, so some sources. I use Amazon for the most part. Of course, there's iTunes that also will sell songs, and a lot of people will use SoundCloud to get music. There are some songs that are not commercially available anymore. Reason I have no idea why they're not, but one of them is Mavis Staples' Christmas Vacation. There's another version of it that's out that, in my opinion anyway, is not quite as good. All right, so one of the things that you want to do is normalize songs using a little free program called MP3 Gain. And what MP3 Gain will do is it will set your song so that the volume is the same on every song. That's pretty important when you start thinking about, okay, I'm going to be broadcasting this on my little FM radio station or playing the songs outside on the speaker. You want them all to have the same basic volume so that the person sitting in the car is not distracted by the next song all of a sudden being softer or louder than the previous song. Now, when you go and create a new sequence, there's a little bit of talk a little bit about whether you want to use a 25 or 40 frames per second. I have always used for myself 40 frames per second. I do some commercial work that's at the 25 frames per second. What I found with the 40 frames per second, if I'm doing singing faces, I can just put the timing mark in a little more precisely, a little bit closer to the actual words if I'm using the 40 frames per second. Visually, there's not a whole lot of difference. If you do some very slow fades, you might notice a difference between the 25 and the 40. But in the commercial work where I do the 25 frames per second, really it's not that noticeable or that distracting. My hardware's set up so that I can do the 40 frames per second. So that's typically how I'll do that. Okay, let me get back over here. Now, timing marks. I spend a lot of time on timing marks. The reason why I spend a lot of time on timing marks is because they provide the framework and it helps you tie the lights to the music. One of the things that we like visually is that we like for things to change on a beat or sound or series of sounds. Those types of things appeal to us aesthetically. If you want to see where it probably started with most of us, go back and find some old videos that used to run on MTV back when they actually played music videos. And you'll see that a lot of times the visuals change on the beats. So spending time on your timing marks is going to help you tie those lights to the music. If you do nothing else but go in and run the Queen Mary Vamp plugins for the beats and then tie it to that, people will enjoy your sequence so much more. Okay, there's two types of timing marks. The first type is generated, and then the next type is manual. That's where you actually go in, you'll place your cursor on the waveform, and you will click, you'll just touch the T, and every time you hit the T, it puts in a timing mark for you. Now, the basic structure, this is kind of my process. I will go in and put in a basic structure. Doing somewhere between 20 and 30 songs a year is kind of what I sequence. So doing that, you'd be surprised the number of songs that follow this basic structure. You have the intro, verse 1, chorus, verse 2, chorus breakdown, verse 3, and then some sort of conclusion. All right, so my basic structure, and Clyde was talking about this a little bit, is it breaks things up so that I know where there's potential for some repetition. Because believe it or not, if the chorus is the same, we like some repetition. Now, not too much, but we do like some repetition from chorus to chorus to chorus because it makes it seem a little more cohesive when you follow the same things. If you'll go look at The Greatest Showman from xLights, and you'll see what I'm talking about very clearly there. When they would hit the chorus, of course, you'd have the pinwheel going across the entire display. And that's something that they did every time. And it made it a very cohesive sequence. All right, so you've got the basic structure. And then you have what detailed timings. Now this is just an add-on that I throw in, and I usually do these in this order. I will create a timing mark or a timing line there, and call it detailed timings. I will not put anything in it until I'm actually sequencing, because when I'm listening to the music, I might hear, oh, okay, there are some horns that sound pretty good, or there's some bells that I want to highlight. So that's kind of my catch-all. I'll throw anything into the detailed timings, but I do that as I sequence because it helps me place the effects so that it coincides with those unique elements of the song. Now, I don't know if you've ever used this, but I'm going to switch over here. This is a little song that I'm working on right now. It's called "Everybody Loves Christmas." It's by Eddie Money. Old song, but it's really a pretty good song. All right, up here is, of course, your waveform. If you right-click on your waveform, you will see that it's identified as the raw waveform. Okay, well, if I come down here and select the base waveform, all right, you'll see now that it's removed some of the noise. And if I zoom in on that, you will see here that the drum marks are jumping out at you. And that's what I'm kind of highlighting is the drum marks here. All right, so a lot of times, because if you go in and put in the beats are going to hit on a regular intervals, regardless of what the drummer's doing. All right, sometimes a drummer will go off and do some crazy stuff. Well, that's something that you can pick up in this base waveform. All right, there are also others, the treble, the alto, the non-vocals. What's interesting is that every time you click on this, and I'll play it, I don't know if you'll be able to hear it because it muffles it so much. I'll play a couple of seconds of this. I don't know if you can hear it, but you can hear the basic drums as you go across there. All right, so I'm going to change this back to the raw waveform. So a lot of times what I'll do, and let me open up. Opening up the same sequence. All right, now this is the same sequence with some timing marks in. Remember I said I'm sequencing in my view, so I can select more than one timing mark there. Okay, so structure is my first one. And you'll see these are the major areas, the structure that go all the way through the sequence. Then I started with some of my detailed timings. The way that the song starts out is it starts out with some bells. And every time a jingle bell hits, I put in a timing mark there as part of my detailed timings. Now, I added another one in here. I just call it organ, horns, and bells because there's certain areas where we've got some neat elements. I'll go over and play this for you. Okay, there's an organ playing. So I've got that highlighted because I think I'll come back later and I'll drop something in there to show that I'm, as a sequencer, I'm at least listening to the music. There's also cymbals. Now, the reason why I have the cymbals is when you listen to the drum beat, if you look here, the beats themselves, okay, the beats are more frequent than the cymbals. The cymbals are hitting every other beat is basically what is happening throughout the sequence. So what I created a separate timing mark for the cymbals themselves. And the idea is that I can set up another rhythm I can do something with those cymbals that is not as fast as the beats themselves. For example, when you're doing arches, it's a good idea to make it where it's not too fast. And so hitting every other mark like that makes for a really nice, nice looking arch effect. I've also added one that I call drums. The reason why I added the drums in, I'll clear the screen. There's little places where there's just a little drum riff, and I want to hit those. I don't know what I'll do with them yet, but I know that they're there and I know that they're strong. And so I'll come back to those later and figure out exactly what I'm going to do with it. All right, so kind of give you an overview here. Got your basic structure. Then you add in some detailed timings. You might have some instruments that you add in. Once you add all those in, by the time you add in the beats, all right, you can see you have a pretty good visual representation of what the song is like. And so what this does is it allows me to go ahead and sequence to the major elements of the song itself. So that's kind of my structure, the way that I do things when I sequence. And I think what it does is it makes it a little richer, because one of the things that makes a sequence really good, I think, is when it follows the music. And the more timing marks you have, I think the better you can follow it. All right, so let's look at the tools that you have.
Hey, Michael, real quick, don't mean to interrupt you and ruin your train of thought, but just to let you know we're about the halfway mark. But if anybody has questions that they want answered, or really good questions, go ahead and put them in chat and we'll get to them at the end.
No, thank you. I appreciate that. And if you want to hop in at the 10-minute mark too, I'll make sure that we're close. I've got kind of an area that I can just use as little or as much as I need to.
Roger that.
All right. So now your tools. When you look at sequencing, your primary tools are the effects, the colors you use, the layer settings themselves, and the layer blending. Now, those are the primary ones. So when you're learning to sequence, focus in on those 4 areas: the effects, the colors, the layer settings, and the layer blending. Now, your secondary tools, they're important, obviously, because you got to see what's going on. You have your model preview and your house preview. I think those are secondary tools that can help you. Then you have the tertiary. These are things like the effect assist. The effect assist is really important if you're going to do a lot of morphs. They have the select effect, the value curves, the color dropper. I got a select effect in there twice, but sorry about that. But those secondary tool or tertiary tools are there to help you use the other tools. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to kind of go through the primary tools that you have and show you just the basics again, because you want to work on the basics before you want to crawl before you start walking and running. All right, right tool for the job. All right, not all effects look good. What you need to do is learn what looks good on your models. Some general guidelines: linear movements look better on linear models. There's always exceptions to that. Now, I'm going to give you a tool that you can use. If you're trying to learn to sequence, this is a pretty good tool. Let me get back over to xLights. So I'm going to open this up. I'm going to call up this animation. All right, now I'll show you what I did here. Is I just went in and I created a 3-minute rather, 180-second animation. And what I did was I put in timing marks every 10 seconds. Then I went in and I created a basic, the basic spiral. You see bars, shockwave, circles, fan, fire, galaxy. What I did was I went ahead and I put that in, and I'm going to bring this up for you. Now, I haven't gone in and scrubbed any of these for the groups that they're on. But what this does by taking an effect and copying it down over all your groups and models, and then looking at it as it goes through, you'll learn what these basic effects can do on the models on your house. All right, so what this does, it gives you a tool where you can go in, you know what the effect is, and then you can start playing with the effect and see how you can modify it to make it work better on the various models that you have. It's a very specific way to fix things for your display. Now, this one right here, I'm going to go ahead and stop it. Now, like I said, I just copied everything down. Now, the fan effect, you'll see that it goes on the tree and then the various groups. I did not go in and change it to per model default, because if you do that, it will change what you're looking at. All right, so you go in and you start playing with the settings, you start playing with the various modifiers you have available to you. And what it does is it helps you understand, helps you learn what each of the tools that you have available to you, helps you see what it's going to look like on your specific models. All right, so this is just a way to do it. It'll help you learn. It's a good tool, particularly if you're serious about learning to sequence. You can go in, see what each little effect will look like on the various models you have on your house. And so anyway, I just thought I'd throw that out there, a little homework for you, something that you can do. And you'll figure out examples of what looks best on your various models, the things that you have. Now, colors, I have kind of colors are kind of my pet peeve. Main reason why is because I think a lot of times we don't use them effectively. Every color has a connotation associated with it. For example, we think of white as being pure, clean, that sort of thing. That's why wedding dresses are white. Interestingly enough, it's cultural. And in China, for example, the wedding dresses are red. So it's kind of a different thing. Green means new, fresh, rebirth. Red is usually associated with passion, anger, blood, that sort of thing. Gold and purple are regal colors. Blue is a color of trust. It's cool, calming, serene. What I try to do when I am sequencing is I try to match the colors to the song. A lot of times I will develop a primary palette, and then sometimes I'll develop a supporting or secondary palette if there's not enough spaces on developing my palette. Now, random colors convey no message. They can look really cool, but in my mind, they are a missed opportunity. In other words, if you're just doing random colors, you're missing an opportunity to convey an emotion because the colors are not something that we consciously think about, but it hits us on a subconscious level. So when you're sequencing, people see a color, they will associate an emotion with it. And if that emotion coincides with the message of the song, it just makes your sequence that much more powerful. So again, I think, random colors are cool if that's what you like, but it is a missed opportunity to communicate on a subconscious level with your audience. Now here's a color chart. If you go on the internet, you can find color charts everywhere. And what these color charts do, they kind of give you an idea of what the various colors mean. One of the more interesting ones And if you'll do the research, you can verify this is true. The color blue, okay, associated with being professional and trustworthy. Out of the Fortune 500 companies in the United States, a very large percentage of them have the color blue in their logo. You might have never noticed it without having done some color research, but that's why they do it. A lot of times too, for example, if I'm doing a religious sequence, I'll use the color purple because it's associated with spirituality. I might use the color gold because it's associated with being regal, for example. So, figure out what you're trying to communicate, use the colors to your advantage. And that's the second thing. One of the neat new tools that we have here, and you really should consider using it. And I'll show you here on the color dialog. Okay, you can go in and add sparkles. And when you add sparkles, you can also change the color of the sparkles. We used to only have white sparkles, but now if you want to, you can change the colors of the sparkles, and all that does is enhance whatever you're doing. Okay, let me get back over to our slides here. Now, the next tool, okay, layer blending. Layer blending deals with how things are going to be blended primarily horizontally and vertically. Okay, the horizontal is when we're talking about on your screen here, transitioning from one effect to the next. Okay, we're going to use these blending tools, our in transition and our out transition, to transition into the effect, transition out of the effect. The layer blending is your vertical blending. In other words, what it does is it determines how you're going to the various layers are going to interact in what you're doing itself. Now, a couple of the best ones when you're just starting out, the best ones to use, of course, on the vertical ones between layers, normal, layered, and average. Figure those three out first and figure out how to use them. And that's where I would focus my efforts initially. Okay, on the horizontal, I would focus my efforts on the fade and the wipe, learning how to use those initially. Again, because you can't learn everything all at once. So you've got to pick and choose. And those are the ones that I recommend you learn for basic programming. Fade and wipe on the horizontal transitions, and then the normal, average, and layered on the vertical blending itself. Okay, the next thing we're going to talk about is this tool here, the layer settings. Again, keeping it very basic. What it does is it gives you a buffer, an area. That's what this black area is. And you can play with that by right-clicking. You can use the full buffer. You can do halves, thirds, quarters. You can do whatever you like with this buffer right here. And you'll be surprised. For example, sometimes if you'll import an image and the image is on your tree, but it's distorted and it's not looking right. If you'll come in here and play with this buffer a little bit, resize the buffer, you'll get what you're wanting to do. Now, I want to focus a little bit more on the render styles. The two that you really need to focus in on, first is the default and the per preview. Okay, if you are not in a group, that is, you have a single element, like in this example here, the mega tree or the matrix are not groups. All right, if I go over here and select something on the matrix, and then I go to the layer settings, you'll see here that all I have is I've got per preview, single line, and as a pixel. However, if I come over to one of the groups, like the all candy canes, you'll see now that I have the default, the per preview. I've got a single line, got it as a pixel, but then I have all these others, the horizontal verticals, the vertical per model, the overlay, single line as a model, default model as a pixel, per model default, all those things. I have some additional styles, render styles available to me when you're doing groups. So just be aware of that. And again, what I recommend you do is you focus in on the basics. Learn what the default render style does, learn what the per preview does, and then on your groups, the per model default and the per model preview, learn what they do, and then build on that basic foundation. All right. Talk a little bit, go into a little bit of a sequencing example here. We don't have a tremendous amount of time, so obviously I'm going to keep it very, very short. Let me get over here to xLights because that's where we would do that. I'm going to open the sequence that has all my timing marks in it. Discard those changes. Clean this up a little bit. Okay, this is my preview. This is a very simple layout that I've got here. This is just a mega tree, some mini trees, some stars, pixel poles, arches, various things like that. Now, let me show you something with, I'm going to go down to the arches themselves. I'm going to park this for right now. And I'm going to use the VU meter on my arches. This is kind of a cheat. This is a good way for you to learn what you can do. I'm going to come down here on the arches and I'm going to put in the VU meter. And I'm just going to put it in this section right here, for example. Let's go over and look at the effect itself. Now I'm going to change this to a timing event, alternate timed sweep. All right, and I'm going to change the layer settings to per model default. Okay, see how before I do that, see how it's just bouncing across all the models? Well, I'm going to do a per model default. So now it's going to bounce across all the models. And I'm going to tell it to do it according to the beats. Now my beats are right here. Those are the beats, okay? And in the context of the structure, you can see that I'm doing these beats right where that effect is. All right, so by dropping that in there, show you the house preview.
Don't you love it? All right.
Okay, so now it's hitting every beat. Every time it's hitting the cymbals. Okay, so what I did was I put that in there and I've got it timed to the beats. If I change that to the cymbals,
Don't you love it?
it's a little bit slower. Now it's hitting at the bottom every time.
At home where I wanna
So that's how an easy way that you can put in some effects on some arches is you use the VU meter and you go into the sweeps. You have the timing event sweep, the sweep 2. You just go in and play with these, and those are great. All of those do different things on arches, and so you can use that. Okay, I kind of like the way that it looked with the beats, so I'm going to leave it there on the beats themselves. If you've ever seen one of my sequences, one of the things that you know is there's, I really like to use spirals on my mega tree. All right, so if I come in here and I want to put in some spirals, I will drop some spirals right here on the mega tree. Now that's pretty slow given the way that it is. There's a couple of things that you could do on the movement. Again, let me show you an easy cheat if you're a beginner. You can come in here to the value curves for the movement and tell it you want to do it with the music. I don't know what this will look like, but we'll give it a try. Okay, probably a little too fast, just based on what I see there.
Don't you love it? All right.
Okay, so I'm not going to like that a whole lot. So what I can do,
Hey, Michael.
Yes.
Michael, I sorry I missed your 10-minute warning, but we got about 5 minutes
That's
left.
absolutely fine. Well, what I'll do is I'll kind of wrap things up for you guys. Sorry we didn't have more time for sequencing, but watching somebody sequence really is not that exciting. I've done it a time or two before. All right, so let me get over here. Get to our next part. Maybe. You never know what's going to happen here. There we go. All right, so this is probably the most important time. I know that's why I show up for these things, is to make sure I get something free. So if we can, we're going to do the raffle. If you can tell us who's the sponsor, what are our gifts that we're giving away this time?
Actually, if you want to go ahead and shuffle on up to your question and or sponsor slide. If anybody has a question for Michael, we've got about 5 minutes. If you want to ask him a question now, that'd be great. Go ahead and open up your mics and ask away. Anyone at all?
Hey, can you finish what you were about to do there with that spiral?
Yeah, I can show you what I was going to do. What I was going to do is I turned on the symbols mark because that bounces back and forth. Okay, now I'm going to go back in here to my movements, and you'll see there that the symbol marks are on there. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to do a sawtooth. I got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 that I'm going to deal with here. So I will change this number of cycles to 8. Okay, now I've got this. You'll notice though that it doesn't line up right away, all the way that it should. So I'm going to take that and I'm going to change it to a custom. Now that it's a custom, I can take these marks and start moving them to get them better aligned with whatever timing that we've got on there. These in the middle. And I'm going to drop these down considerably, because if you get going too fast, it just doesn't look good, because you're just, it's more than what the eye can comprehend. Bring that just up there and finish it out. Okay, so now,
Don't you love it? All right.
go too fast. So what I would do is I'd come in here, do it again, and I'm going to start deleting some of these. Every other one.
And this is telling us the speed of the spiral as it goes through. So it's speeding up at the top and slowing
It is the
down.
movement, right? It'll speed up, slow down, speed up, slow down. Now we'll see how this looks. Maybe it'll work, maybe it won't.
Don't you love it? All right.
Okay, you can see there it started. I was getting close to what I wanted. It was starting to go back and forth with the beat, the rhythms themselves. All right, so that's something that is fairly easy to do. Just takes a little trial and error to get it visually the way you want it. Okay, any other questions?
All right, Michael, thank you for your presentation. I appreciate it, and I'm sure everybody else does too. If we could flip over to that sponsor page,
I can get us there.
everybody take a glimpse at that and make sure we visit each and every one of these. Each and every one of them contributes greatly to our hobby, obsession, whatever you want to call it. So we'll get down to it. Let's see. Yep. If you have any questions for Michael,
This is James. I have one question. When you were showing the tool where you had all the effects lined up on all the groups and stuff, that was just something where you just dropped all of the same element on all those groups, correct?
That is correct. I would put it on the top row. I'd put in the effect, and then I just copy it down, just across. And then I sit there and I watch it and figured out, hey, I like this, I don't like this. And then I would start playing with the settings for that model group to make it look the way I want it to. And what that does is it's kind of just a learning process. You see what the effect is, you see how it looks on your stuff, and you learn from that.
And how do we get I see here a PDF copy of the slides? Do we have to email you for those, or?
Yeah, just email me and I'll send you the Google. The Google link was too long. I mean, you know, you got the slashes. And
yeah, thanks, James, for the question, but we need to move on. We're going to start running this in the next class if we don't get moving here. So once again, thanks, Michael. You can get a hold of Michael at showstoppersequences.com, or he'll be available in the video room later on this afternoon at 2:30, I believe. Right, yep, there's your slide. So we'll go ahead and end the YouTube slide or